Today we're going to talk about the distance formula. And the distance formula is just how far it is from one segment to another. Now this is it's going to look a bit scary. It's going to look like this. It has a square root. And then we have these x sub 2's and x sub 1's that we've seen before. So x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And then we square it. And then plus, and we do the same thing with the y's. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1, and then I square that. And I get this for a formula. And second x, second y, first y, squaring things, all of that. Pretty straightforward, but there will be square roots. We might have decimals. There are a few other things that happen there. So when I look at this, a few things to point out. This is a really good question. If you see this question, that means, maybe do the distance formula. What is the measure? Maybe do the distance formula. What is the length? Do the distance formula. These are all key indicators of do the distance formula. So those just help you figure that out. What to do. Your answer here is a positive number. Remember, distance is always positive. Down on the midpoint, it was a coordinate. It was a pair of numbers, an ordered pair. This one, just a number. Got some things here. We figure out what the points are. We plug them into the formula. We perform all that stuff, and we get our answer. So let's take a look at how this works. Got a couple of points here, A and C. I'm going to look at C. I know that is 0, 3. So I'm just going to label that as 0, 3. I have A. I know that is over 3 down 7. So that's a negative 7. And those are my 2 points. And with those, I can find the distance. I use the distance formula. So there's my distance formula. I plug stuff in. My second x value. It doesn't really matter which one we do second. I'm going to let this be my first one up here, and this one be my second. But if you wanted to switch those, you could. So my second x value is 3. But some people like to drop that square root, and that causes problems later. So don't do that. 3 minus my first x value is 1 squared, and then plus, and now I go with the y's. I go, my second y is negative 7 minus my first one is 3 squared. Step by step, 3 minus 0 is 3 squared. And negative 7 minus negative 3 is negative 10 squared. Square those. It's going to be 9. 3 squared is 9. Remember, 3 squared just means 3 times 3. Negative 10 squared is 100. And that adds together to give me 109. Now I'm just going to use my calculator here and turn that on. And what I've got here, I want to know square root. Now the square root button on this calculator happens to be right here. Here's the squared key right there in blue is square root. So second squared gives me a square root, 109. And it just leaves it as 109. So I could have AC equals the square root of 109. I could put a box around that. I could type that in. Or sometimes I want a decimal. So on this calculator, they're right here above the enter key. I'm going to push that. And that gives me a decimal of 10.44. watch for directions and answer it the way it asks for. Sometimes it's going to be looking for decimal, sometimes it's going to be looking for the exact value. This is what we consider exact. This is the decimal. Well, if it wants a decimal, it's going to say round it to the nearest whatever. Make sure you do that. Round to the proper place, or it'll count, or things will be counted wrong. Especially if you're working on something with delta math, they count those wrong. So make sure you're watching that. Here's just another example. This one, we had to figure out what the coordinates were. Here, they give us the coordinates. I'm just going to plug stuff in then. So I have my formula. I'm going to write it out every time for the time being until you guys have it all memorized. And then I just plug things in. So my first point, my second point. My second x is -3 minus my first x is -1. And then I do the same thing for my y's. My second y, -4. My first y is +4. Remember, those become a plus, so that's -3 plus 1. It's -2. This is -8. And then when I do this, I don't use my calculator for this part, but I want to make sure that you're careful, because if you decide to take your calculator and just say, oh, I'm going to type in -2, which you shouldn't do because I know you can all handle it, but I'm going to do -2 and square it, just like that, it's going to give you a -4, and that's not what it is. This is -2 times -2, which is a +4. If you're going to use your calculator to square things, you have to use the parentheses. So you would have to do -2 in parentheses, then square it, which is 4. But it's just faster if you do that, because these are nice numbers that you know. -8 squared, 64. Square root of 68. Now, square root of 68, square root 68, that simplifies down, and that's the exact value here. So I get a distance of 2 square root 17. That's the exact value, or simplified radical. Watch for those directions. And then again, I can still just push this button down here below the plus sign if I want the decimal, and that gives me an 8.25. And those are my two answers. On online programs, watch for what it says, whether it wants the exact or the decimal. If it's something I'm giving you in class, I'll take either one. So it's just whichever you're most comfortable with. There are a couple of calculators that will be a link online, a couple of online calculators that you have. Also bring your own calculator. It'll make it a lot easier if you have your own calculator to use this with. Remember, I said these black ones, these 36X Pros, or the, I don't have an actual white and gray one or white and blue one, but I have one that looks like this, these yellow ones, the 30XSs. These are really good, and they will handle both this, the exact value, and the decimal portion of it. So it's always good to have one of those for yourself.